You live alone. Maybe it's been a year, maybe 5, maybe longer than you've told anyone. And somewhere along the way, quietly, without a single announcement, something shifted. Not in your apartment, not in your routine, in how you see people. But here's the thing nobody says out loud. It's not that you became antisocial. It's not that you're broken. It's not even that you're lonely in the way people assume. It's that your brain got very, very good at something. And now the same world that used to pull you in feels like it's playing at the wrong volume. Here's what actually happens. When you live alone for an extended period of time, your nervous system doesn't stay the same. It recalibrates. It rebuilds around a new set of inputs. And the version of you that emerges from that, they read people differently. They want connection differently. They tolerate things differently. And if you've ever felt like you're watching everyone from behind glass, this video is about why. We're going to go through 5 specific psychological shifts that happen when you live alone for a long time. Not the surface stuff. Not, you get used to silence. The deep stuff. The stuff that changes how your mind processes other human beings. Here's where it starts. It's almost invisible, which is why most people miss it. When you live alone, your environment becomes predictable. You control the temperature, the sound, the pace. There's no one eating loudly in the next room. No one is having a phone call you didn't ask to hear. No one is filling the air with energy that isn't yours. And your nervous system, being the highly efficient machine it is, adapts. It stops bracing for input that never comes. Over time, your baseline calm drops lower than most people's will ever go. Now you walk into a birthday party, a busy office, a family dinner, and within 20 minutes, you're drained in a way that has nothing to do with whether you like these people. Your nervous system is just processing the sensory load of other humans existing near you, and it's expensive now, in a way it wasn't before. This isn't introversion, it's recalibration. Introverts know from childhood that crowds cost them energy. This hits differently, because you remember when it didn't cost this much. This is the first layer of the shift. Before you even form a judgment about anyone, before a single word is spoken, your body is already doing the math on whether the stimulation is worth tolerating. You're not being cold. Your nervous system is just running a tax that other people don't have to pay. That's just the physiological layer. But the next shift, this is where it gets psychological. And it explains why you've started looking at people's behavior and thinking, why would anyone spend their energy like that? When you live alone, you stop leaking energy. Think about it. You're not managing anyone else's moods. You're not absorbing stress that was never yours. You're not performing small talk to keep a room comfortable. And gradually, without realizing it, you develop an extremely sharp sense of what energy is worth. You start auditing interactions, not consciously, not intentionally, but the part of your brain that tracks cost versus return. It's been running quietly, and it's gotten very precise. Here's how this shows up in real life. Someone vents to you, used to pull you in. Now there's a part of you, before you even fully engage, already calculating. Is this person going to feel better, or are they going to need to do this again next week? Someone proposes a get-together. You immediately run a quiet calculation. Energy in, energy out. What do I get back? Not in a selfish way. In a you've learned what refills you and what doesn't. You start noticing when conversations take more than they give. You start noticing when people use connection to regulate themselves without ever asking if you want to be someone's emotional regulation tool. You develop what you might call social debt awareness. When most people are spending social energy freely, almost carelessly, you're watching it like it's a finite resource. Because for you now, it actually is. Here's the paradox. This skill is genuinely rare. Most people go their entire lives never learning to recognize when they're being emotionally depleted in slow, invisible ways. You've learned it. But the trap is, it can flip into something harder. Because when you start seeing social energy as currency, everyone starts to feel expensive. Even the people who are worth it. Even the relationships that would fill you up if you let them. And that's what makes this the central shift. because every other shift we're about to talk about runs through this one. Now that your nervous system has a new baseline, and you've developed this cost awareness around people, something else starts happening. Something more private. Something that makes intimacy start to feel less like comfort and more like exposure. Living alone gives you something almost no one talks about. Complete jurisdiction over your inner world. Nobody sees your mornings. Nobody knows what you eat at 11 p.m., or which music you put on when nobody's watching, or the thoughts you have before you fall asleep. And over time, that private world becomes yours deeply. In a way, a shared life can't be replicated. And here's where it gets complicated. When someone gets close, really close, it starts to feel like they're walking into a room you didn't invite them into. Not because you don't like them, but because genuine intimacy requires visibility. It requires letting someone see the private self. And you've spent a long time building a private self that doesn't need to be seen. This shows up as keeping parts of yourself back, even from people you care about, feeling invaded by questions that other people find totally normal, getting comfortable right up until someone actually wants more, and then pulling back slightly, almost without deciding to. It's not fear of intimacy in the clinical sense. It's that intimacy now requires you to give up something you've learned to protect. A therapist once described it like this. Long-term solitude gives you the experience of being fully yourself with no audience. And the problem with that experience is, once you've had it, you never stop wanting it. Even inside a relationship, even inside a friendship. You start carving out inner rooms that no one's allowed into. And sometimes those rooms become the most real part of you. Here's where it gets dangerous, because these first three shifts, the recalibrated nervous system, the social currency awareness, the protected private self, they all feed into something that happens so quietly, you probably won't notice it, until it's already cost you something. When you live alone, you prove something to yourself every single day. You're fine. Actually fine. Not, I'll survive. Fine. Genuinely, peacefully, productively fine. Your needs get met. Your time is your own. The quality of your life doesn't depend on anyone else's choices. And your brain logs that. Over and over. I don't need this to feel okay. What this produces, slowly, almost imperceptibly, is a rising standard for what's worth disrupting that peace. Not a conscious standard. It's instinctive. A friendship that requires a lot of maintenance starts to feel like more than it's worth. Not because you're selfish, because the baseline you're protecting feels genuinely valuable. A relationship that would require negotiating your space, your rhythm, your silence, starts to look like a cost-benefit problem instead of just a relationship. You start making decisions that look like self-protection, but are actually something closer to, my life is good enough that the threshold for changing it is really high. And here's the part that should make you stop. That threshold doesn't announce itself. You don't one day decide, I'm too good for connection. You just keep waiting for something that feels worth it. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you're waiting with a standard that nothing, and nobody was ever going to clear. If any of this is landing for you, if you've found something in this that feels familiar but you haven't had language for it, the comment section of this video has become something unexpected. People describing this exact thing. People realize they thought they were just being selective. Might be worth reading through. You're not as alone in this as it probably feels. Okay, we've covered 4 shifts. But this last one, this is the one that really unsettles people. Because it's the most contradictory, it's the most unfair, and it's the one that most people who've lived alone for a long time recognize immediately. Here's the brutal irony of everything we've talked about. All of this, the recalibration, the social currency awareness, the protected self, the high threshold, it makes you better at reading people. Not in a cold way, in a genuinely sharp, almost eerie way. Because you've spent so much time in silence, with no social noise to process, your pattern recognition around human behavior gets very good. You notice things. Micro-shifts in someone's energy. When someone's being real versus performing. When someone's saying one thing and meaning another. When a group dynamic has a hidden power structure that everyone else is pretending isn't there. People find you perceptive, insightful, easy to open up to, weirdly. And at the same time, you are one of the hardest people to actually reach, because the more accurately you see people, the more precisely you can anticipate disappointment. The more you can see where someone is operating from fear, or ego, or need, the more it starts to feel like connection would require tolerance, not resonance. This is the paradox. You see people more clearly than you ever have, and it's made closeness feel further away. You're not cynical. Cynics stop caring. You care, deeply, about what's real, about what's genuine. You've just raised the definition of genuine to a place that's very hard to reach. And the real question this whole video is circling, is that wisdom? Or is that the most sophisticated form of self-protection you've ever built? Maybe both. Probably both. Here's what's actually happening to you. You're not broken. You're not cold. You're not someone who doesn't need people. You're someone whose brain reorganized itself around quality, around realness, around silence that costs nothing, around the understanding that being alone is not the same as being lonely. And that reorganization gave you 5 things most people never develop. A nervous system that knows what calm actually feels like. An eye for what connection is costing you. A private self that belongs entirely to you. The knowledge that your own company is enough. And a perceptiveness about people that most people spend decades trying to learn. The question isn't whether those things are good or bad. They are you now. The question is what you do with them. Because somewhere, there are people who can meet you at that standard, who won't feel expensive, who will feel relieved. And they're not going to find you if you're behind glass. You already know the hard part. You've been doing the hard part alone, quietly, for a while now. The next step is just deciding what you actually want, and letting yourself want it out loud.